Hey guys, this is the Forex price action trading course. This is lesson number 8, how to find legitimate head and shoulder patterns. Alright. Okay, so here's a lesson overview. First, I'll be explaining the 4 elements that constitute a legitimate H&S pattern. And then, I'll go on to explain how to locate fake H&S patterns. And I'll be demonstrating both of these on a chart. Alright, let's get going. Okay, the 4 elements that constitute a legitimate H&S pattern. Now keep in mind, these rules are applicable to long and short H&S patterns. However, the demonstrations will be done on short H&S patterns, just for simplicity's sake. Alright, so let's go on to element number 1. Both necklines must be parallel. Okay, so first of all, let's understand there's 2 necklines to a H&S pattern. So the bottom neckline being here, and the top neckline being up here. These 2 necklines must be parallel. Now parallel means if there's 2 lines like this, there must be an equal distance between the 2 lines. So in this case, these 2 lines are parallel. Now if the lines were like this, well, these lines are not parallel because there's not an equal distance between them. So a simple way to make sure the 2 necklines are parallel is as follows. Now I'm using the MT4 platform, but I'm sure any major platform has this function. So let me just get rid of these trend lines. Now I'm sure your charting platform has this function where you could draw a trend line, then you could drag it down and up. Now what we want to do is draw that first bottom neckline, then adjust it to a pivot above to make that top neckline. Then just redraw that bottom neckline, and that assures that the 2 lines are parallel. Okay, so the 2 necklines must be parallel. Okay, let's go on to the remainder of that text. Alright, so both necklines must be parallel, and the main neckline cannot be broken out or surpassed before the right shoulder's price level is reached. Okay, the main neckline I'm referring to is the neckline on the bottom, and the right shoulder's price level is right here, right? Because this is the right shoulder of this H&S pattern. Now, the main neckline cannot be broken out or surpassed, so it cannot be broken out, nor can it be surpassed before the right shoulder's price level is reached. Now in this case, the main neckline is not broken out or surpassed before the right shoulder's price level is reached, so we're okay on that front. So just to review, the 2 necklines must be parallel. We have that checked. And there cannot be a breakout or surpass of the main neckline before the right shoulder's price level is reached. Okay, so we cleared element number 1. Alright. Okay, element number 2. The H&S must be relatively flat. Okay? Alright, so a simple way to know if your H&S is flat enough is to first draw a clock. Okay, so this is 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock. Now, if the H&S's angle is between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock, well, that assures that the angle is relatively flat. Now, in our case, the H&S has an angle of about 230, which means this H&S is relatively flat. Alright, so we cleared element number 2. Let's go on to number 3. Okay, element number 3. The top neckline can only be adjusted to a wick between the main pivot and its last correlating major pivot. Okay? Alright, so that main pivot is referring to this pivot right here, where that bottom neckline was drawn. Okay? And the last major correlating pivot will be right here. Now this is the last major correlating pivot because it is the last pivot where price reversed direction before the H&S. So in other words, this is not the last major correlating pivot, neither is this one, because these are not the last places that price reversed direction. This is the last pivot that price reversed direction down before the H&S. Okay? So this is the main pivot, and this is the last major correlating pivot. Now this upper trend line can only be adjusted to a pivot between these two pivots, which could be here, 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 and all these areas, all the way up to this pivot right here. Because these pivots is between the main pivot and the last major correlating pivot. In other words, we cannot adjust the top pivot to these pivots here, nor can we adjust it to these pivots here. The top neckline pivot adjustment must be between the main pivot and the last major correlating pivot. Okay? So in this case, we adjusted the top neckline to this pivot right here, which is between the main pivot and the last major correlating pivot. So we cleared element number 3 also. Let's go on to number 4. Okay, number 4. The prior trend on the H&S time frame must be in the opposing direction. Okay, so let's remember that an H&S pattern is a reversal pattern. So in other words, if the prior trend was long, the H&S pattern predicts that price will reverse direction and go down. Thus, for H&S pattern to be legitimate, the prior trend must be in the opposing direction. And in this case, that will be long. Okay, so let's see if the prior trend was in the opposing direction for this H&S pattern. Okay, the rule of thumb to decide the trend. Zoom all the way out. If there's a higher pivot on the left side of the chart, the trend is not in the opposing direction. Okay, so let's go ahead and zoom all the way out and bring that H&S pattern to the right side of the chart. Now here's that H&S pattern we're talking about. Now to the left side of that H&S pattern, there cannot be any higher highs. And in this case, there are no higher highs before this H&S pattern, which means the prior trend before this H&S pattern was long. And that consequently means the prior trend was in the opposing direction. And that means this H&S pattern cleared element number 4 also. Okay. So since this H&S pattern cleared all the elements 1 through 4, that shows that this H&S was in fact legitimate. Alright, so now let's go and see how to locate fake H&S patterns. Okay, we'll go on to the next slide. Alright, how to locate fake H&S patterns. If any one of the 4 elements are missing from the H&S pattern, it is a fake. Okay, let's take a look at the chart we'll be using to demonstrate this fake H&S pattern. Alright, this is a Euro USD daily chart, and it's roughly at recent price. Now, if you watch my weekly forecast, you could recall that this H&S I was calling to be a fake. Thus, from this right shoulder, and as price was falling, I was telling you guys we are long bias and to take long trades right up to this right shoulder's pivot high price level. Now, I knew this H&S was a fake, and that is why I was forecasting being long at least up to this right shoulder's price level as a target, because it was missing one of the 4 elements that constitute a legitimate H&S pattern. Now let's go ahead and go through that element list again to find which element was missing from this H&S pattern. Okay, so we'll go back a slide. Alright, so element number 1. Both necklines must be parallel and the main neckline cannot be broken out or surpassed before the right shoulder's price level is reached. So both necklines in this H&S were parallel. Moreover, the main neckline was not broken out or surpassed before the right shoulder's price level was reached. So it cleared element number 1. Let's go on to number 2. Okay, element 2. The the H&S must be relatively flat. Alright, so again, we'll draw that clock. So we have 12, 1, 2, and 3 o'clock. And we want the angle of this H&S to be between 2 and 3 o'clock, right? Now this H&S is very flat, say around 245. So we cleared number 2 also. Let's go on to number 3. Okay, element 3. The top neckline can only be adjusted to a wick between the main pivot and its last correlating major pivot. Okay, so this H&S's main pivot being right here, and its last correlating major pivot being here, you can see that that top neckline right here was adjusted to this pivot right here, which is between the main pivot and its last correlating major pivot. And so we also cleared number 3. Okay, let's go on to number 4. Okay, element 4. The prior trend on the H&S time frame must be in the opposing direction. Okay, so again, we'll zoom all the way out and bring that H&S to the right side of the chart. So that H&S is right here. Now the price on the left of this H&S pattern has higher highs all over the place, which means the prior trend before this H&S was actually down. And what we wanted for this H&S to be legitimate is for the prior trend to be long, which was not the case for this H&S. So this H&S did not clear element number 4 because the prior trend was not in the opposing direction. Okay, so the reason why I knew this H&S was a fake, and thus as price fell down, we wanted to take long trades right up to this right shoulder's price high, was because the 4th element was missing, which consequently made this H&S a fake. Okay, we'll go on to the next slide. Alright, that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson, I'm going to explain how to find legitimate double top and bottom patterns. Now in future lessons, I'll be explaining how to use legitimate and fake price patterns to gauge the bias of the market, whether long or short. But before that, I want to make sure you guys understand how to find legitimate and fake patterns first. Okay, so if you have any questions about this lesson, please leave it in the comments. And thanks for watching, guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Okay, bye.